Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, episode 77. I'm Enigmas, and today, circles are spinning for no real specific reason. We've been messing around with the construction and decided to have a little bit of fun with the setup. This is not a practical application of the nested circles, but it's fun. It's kind of fun to look at. This is the mechanism that's going to be used to suspend the borehead that's going to be doing the mining in a way that allows it to self-level, so we don't have to worry about gravity applying torque to various different fixtures and potentially causing them damage because they aren't intended to sustain that. But once we got it all set up and there was rotors and things, and with a little bit of help from thrusters, we were able to make them turn, and then one's turning one way and the other's turning the other way. It's kind of fun. It's kind of neat to mess around with. We'll speed it up just a little bit because it's even more interesting that way. It seems that there's not enough torque from the rotors to move the large ring on its own. So that's why we put the extra thrusters on it. We even put some thrusters on the small ring because there's probably going to be a time in the future when we're going to need to adjust the position of the rings. Let's say, for example, we're done mining and we want to get everything ready to leave and move on to the next area. Maybe the rings are really in kind of a bad spot for that. We'll be able to adjust them with the assistance of the thrusters in conjunction with the torque supplied by the rotors so that everything works the way that you might expect. In the meantime, we still have to work out exactly how that system is going to work for lowering. I'm going to start calling it the tether because in my mind that's what makes sense. It's going to be basically a column of blocks that will include conveyor blocks, probably at some point blast door blocks somewhere attached to it because those seem to be pretty good for allowing us to get a little bit of motion and things colliding without necessarily going to pieces right away. Things like that. There's a number of different things that we have to figure out, but basically the inner circle is going to hold the tether. The tether is going to extend down to the borehead. The borehead is going to connect to the tether by way of connector and merge block so that we can detach the borehead and anchor it somewhere else and take it with us when we happen to be moving on without having to constantly dismantle it and re-weld it and all that other stuff. The irony is we didn't have that approach necessarily quite so well ironed out with the original Atlas and the track ship, even though reassembling the borehead will be much easier from blueprints than the track ship ever was. So it's weird that it worked out that way in my head, but that's what happened. Once everything is in place, the only thing that we have to think about is, first of all, how to lower it, and also what to do when we're done mining. And I'm thinking right now, the reason why I kind of had this whole idea with the circles to begin with was because I wanted the tether to be able to be lifted straight up through the inner circle and then basically lopped off as it goes, and then put a cap on it so that it won't fall through and Bob's your uncle, ready to go on to the next spot after we've detached the borehead. I know this is all kind of theoretical stuff that I'm describing to you while something's going on in front of you, and it's probably a complete mess in everyone's head the way it is in mine. Suffice it to say, these circles serve a purpose aside from what they're doing now, but we're still having a lot of fun with it. So, enough with the spinning circles. It's time to look at what else we've been doing with the ship, which is actually very promising in terms of how much progress we've made. This is what the circles look like, properly lit and not moving. We just stopped them. They shouldn't look like this. They should look flat and sort of flush with the top of the large circle in which they're contained, but they're not because it doesn't matter right now. We've been busy in here as well as over there. This is pretty much the machine room done. I'm saying that a little bit tentatively because I haven't in my own mind declared it as completely done, but the overwhelming majority of the things that we wanted to have in place are there. Last episode we looked at the reactors, we looked at the cargo containers, and we looked at the auto distribution system attached to the 44 arc furnaces that we have on board. What I needed to do after that was take a look at our refinery situation. Refineries tend to be pretty slow, and the more useful the material you're trying to get out of them, the slower they seem to be. Things like uranium and platinum take a very long time to process, despite the fact that you never really need large quantities. You still have to wait a really damn long time to get them. So I'm not opposed to spending a substantial amount of resources on machines to process those kinds of materials a little bit more quickly. And in this case, we've got 8 refineries that you can see from here, and each one has productivity modules attached to it. Under each one of these refineries is another refinery, so we have a total of 16 refineries, each one loaded down with productivity upgrades that get the same kind of automatic distribution system applied to them as we did with the arc furnaces. It's a little bit more difficult to see everything kind of coming into place, and that's because it's spread out a little bit more. The function is exactly the same. The layout is slightly different to accommodate the fact that the refineries are larger and the ports on them are more far apart. So that's basically the reason for why you can't necessarily see everything like you can down here, where it's all condensed and you see all the stuff in nice neat rows and all these other things lining up. It's a little bit spread out with the refineries. And then lastly, we have this disaster here. These are all assemblers, and there's a total of 52 of them. Because when I build on a large scale. Some of you may have already noticed this, but we've got a station down there. We've got this ship, and we've got 52 assemblers now on this ship, each with 2 productivity modules, so that if we've got ingots on board and we do need components wherever we happen to be, we can get them. Realistically speaking, I would never need this many assemblers on this kind of a ship, because this ship is more about extracting the ore, converting it into ingots to save space and weight, and then bringing it to a place like this, to our station, to be assembled into the various different things that we're going to need for whatever project we happen to be focusing on at the time. In this case, we're in a position where we can do all of our assembling whether we're near the station or not, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is definitely a lot of materials tied up in a system that we didn't absolutely need. Now in this case, we don't need to set up an automatic distribution system for this. We just need to do, I don't even think we need to relabel it all. We just need to find the one assembler that's responsible for controlling the entire system, because everything else is going to be set to cooperate with that one assembler. And then we can basically control that one assembler to dictate what we want built, and all of them will go to work on that particular task, which should make for some pretty zippy construction of the components that we need. There's nothing worse than being able to build faster than your machines can keep up with supplying components as you go through them. So that was kind of a thing that was in the back of my mind. And then lastly, hydrogen tanks. Keeping with the theme, machines are purple, storage is blue, whether it's gas or solid matter, and conveyors, things that move items around, are yellow. So that's the color coding for this whole thing. There's just over 30 hydrogen tanks, and what I did was I waited until everything else was done, and then I went around and I tucked hydrogen tanks anywhere I could fit them. So we've got a bunch down here, a bunch down here, and then we've got a bunch horizontally here, and same thing here and back there, and then there's some underneath and around, and pretty much anywhere that you could fit a hydrogen tank, there is one. Yeah, you can see down underneath here we've got some. I lost count at 30. This is basically when I stopped carrying, because that's pretty close to what we had in the Atlas. I think the Atlas actually has 48, and it was so far beyond overkill for anything. And again, we aren't using these because we have hydrogen thrusters on board and we need it for fuel. This is just so that when we're off mining somewhere, we can have the oxygen generators processing the ice into something and then hang on to it in case we ever need it for another ship or another project or whatever. So that's kind of taking advantage of that. So now what remains, we're excluding everything in here, because this is where things kind of slow down. This is all like big stuff that we put in, and it shows obvious signs of progress in very short order. This is the stuff over here now where we're at the spot where it shows very little signs of progress despite much progress having been made. So excluding this over here, what remains for this build is we need to put the top on top of our machine room, and we need to put the back on the ship. I was actually very, very tempted. I was working around these corners, kind of moving around here and then doing the same thing over there, and I was just going to keep going, and then I realized that that would just be a big, blocky, smooth back end for the ship that wouldn't necessarily be in keeping with everything else that we've been trying to do. Like even the sides of the ship we've deliberately gone out of our way to do something, anything, doesn't really matter, just to make them look a little bit more interesting than the flat side of a ship. We don't want to kind of stop now and just leave the back dull and uninteresting, or the top for that matter. Now that it's basically ready, we can cover this whole thing up now, and if we never go back there again, it'll be too soon. We shouldn't have to go back there anymore. And then all that really remains, again, excluding that, is finishing up the shrouds for the conveyors here, front and back. The front area here, we're going to get the oxygen generators in place, and also close in the back wall, because I don't know if we've come down here recently. It's just basically a big open space here, empty space with a control seat. I think we can do better. I think we should do better. I think we will do better. We're going to enclose this area around the control seat a little bit. We're going to have vents providing oxygen, so if we want to have it pressurized, we can. And then everything else is going to be probably oxygen generators and oxygen tanks. This will be closed up. We're going to have a window. Actually, this I'm actually really excited about, because normally when I put windows in like this, it's kind of like I don't even use windows when I'm flying the ship. It's kind of a superfluous sort of thing to have them here, because I always have the third-person view. But here is actually going to be a spot where it could be extremely interesting to have windows when the drill is working, because we're going to have the stuff that's going on with the circles, we're going to have the stuff that's going on with the tether, and we're going to have the stuff that's going on with the borehead, and we can stand inside and just look over the whole thing as it's going down into the hull. So that is kind of a neat area to have a window, I think. So we're going to make sure that we include one there. And then the ship will be pretty close to being done. I have an idea to assist the auto-gyro in keeping the borehead level, is we're going to have an auto-leveling system for the landing gears as well. It's very, very simple and straightforward. Pistons, landing gears, and sensors deployed in a way that the pistons just keep extending until either they can't extend anymore, or until a sensor tells it to stop, in which case it will be a certain amount of room between the sensor and the ground, and by the time all of the pistons have been turned off by sensors, assuming they all are, you should be able to just nudge the ship down a tiny bit and land, and it'll be nearly level on its own if it was hovering level to begin with. So that was kind of an idea that I came up with. Easy to implement, makes it easier for these guys to work the way that they're supposed to, and that will be one of the finishing touches that we put on this guy before we take it down to the moon and see if it actually works. So that's it for this episode. Like I say, there's going to be a couple more episodes where we're going to be doing some hull sculpting and things of that nature that are going to show progress on a larger scale, and then might slow down for an episode or two while we work out the details on this inner segment. We can just kind of discuss it as we go, and then we'll be down on the moon testing the ship as a whole, and ideally putting it into service while we come back up here and continue building our station and the other ships that we have in mind. So if you want to be notified when I add those videos, as always, you can subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.